Hey y'all, okay, hold on. Let's just do some housekeeping. I gotta make sure I'm live on all the things. All the things, all the things. All right. Everybody can see me. Again, I'm just doing housekeeping. So y'all gotta give me a second. Oh, everybody can see me. All right, again, housekeeping, but we're good. I feel like we're good. Center? Good. We're good. Okay. Hey y'all, welcome to the first live for Plants Talk. And obviously, the Instagram handle is different. So the Instagram handle is Plants Talk with Beck, who is me, your host. And yeah, I'm really excited for our first live. And then after this, I'll put this up on YouTube. And yes, so let's get into the topic of what we're discussing today. I am a stay-at-home mom, so I gotta move through this stuff. Okay. So today we're pretty much discussing medicine in season, what medicine is in season right now as far as plant medicine. And I'm just gonna like kind of rattle some things off, and then some things we'll touch on and some things we won't. Some things will just be like, okay, these are things to look out for, like these are good things to have during this season because we know what kind of season this is. Okay, it is September, fall is coming, fall is upon us. So we all know that brings cold and flu season, hay fever, all kind of things like that. So we're gonna touch on a bunch of things. All right, I got my handy dandy notes, so we got a lot to go over. I got my study guides, my course material, which if you watch the video on my YouTube, you'll understand what I mean when I say course material. Okay, we love the course material. All right. Um, but before I get started, I'll just introduce myself a little bit more. So my name is Beck Q. I am the host of this channel or this podcast, wherever you're watching, Plants Talk. I am a self-study herbalist and agriculturalist. I am all things nature, all things grow your own food, all things plant your own medicine. That is me. I'm that girl. I support all of that stuff. And disclaimers before we get into everything. I am not a legal medical doctor. I'm not giving you any medical advice. Nothing that I'm talking about is intended to cure anything or anything like that. And so, do your own research. I am not your primary care. Okay. I am my primary care. Okay. So now we can get into it, y'all. So again, we're talking about what medicine is in season. So around fall, we're kind of focusing more on roots and bark and berries and less on leaves. In the spring season, we're really focused on leaves. We can be focused on roots because the roots of certain plants have had a lot of time to sit underground through the winter. And so spring, yes, we're looking at roots. But spring, we're also looking at leaves and things like that. And even seeds before they begin to really, really germinate or sprouts is something we really look at during the spring to harvest and use as medicine. Um, and in the summer, we're looking more towards fruit. We're also looking a lot at leaves and things like that. But as you get closer to the fall, there are some things that are great to be harvested in the fall. And there are some things that are a little more summer like or spring like. So like fruits and things like that, like fruits. When I say fruits, I mean like berries or anything that comes from the plant within certain seasons. That would be the plant's fruit. And for some of those things, for some of our plants in our outdoor nature, that season for the fruit has passed simply because we're walking into fall. But for other things, that season for the fruit is still very much alive and well. So we're going to be really talking about all of those type of things. There's going to be roots mixed into here. There's going to be, I'll mention a berry or two maybe. But yes, right now the focus is really on what roots can we harvest, what leaves can we harvest, and if you can't harvest it in your local area, you know what I'm saying? Like you could look some of this stuff up and get some of this stuff. But really, it's about medicine for this season, what's in season, and we need right now. Okay. So I came up with a little list just based on things that I personally have used within this season. And I'm going to kind of rattle some things off and maybe kind of go in order. It's our first live, so we'll just see how this goes. Okay. So I'm going to kind of start rattling some of the things off of my handy dandy list of notes. Okay. So the first thing on my list that I would love to talk about is sage. Now, for spiritual purposes, a lot of people look at sage as something you can burn in your home and things like that. But sage also has a lot of very good medicinal usage and purposes that we can look into and utilize during this time. So let's talk a little bit about the sage plant. Okay, if I can get my mouth to work right. Okay. Let's see. Flipping through, girl, because I took a lot of notes. I could have sworn I just had it in my hand. It's in here somewhere, y'all. Bear with you, girl. Okay. We're going to find it. If we can't find it, I'll move on to the next one. I'll tell you that. All right, here it is. Got it. Okay. So I am still I will say I'm still a baby when it comes to scientific names. I try my best to pronounce them. If I butcher them, you know what I mean? Just look it up. Like I said, do your own research. But I'm still a baby when it comes to your regular, your actual scientific names of plants. But right now we're talking about sage. I'm going to try to pronounce this. I believe it's pronounced Slavia officinalis, I believe. Okay, but for real. So I'm going to kind of run down some of the medicinal purposes of sage and ways that we can use sage. So sage is good for clearing mucus. It's also a nerve tonic, and it's also an estrogenic. So if you don't know what an estrogenic is, it is they use it commonly in hormone therapy and things like that. So it's really good estrogen support. So it helps a lot of women who are going through menopause, or even if you have irregular periods or anything like that, you can use sage. And you can use it in any of its forms. And I'm gonna just preface all of these herbs to say you can use most of these herbs in any way you see fit. However, there are some herbs that should not be consumed in certain ways. And so you really have to do your research on that. But a lot of these herbs, you can make fine powders, you can do tinctures, which is like oils. You could do salves, which is like creams, like oil-based creams that you can rub on your skin. Things like that, teas, all kinds of stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways to render your herbs. So yes, estrogenic, we went over that. And also there was a study that was done that showed that sage spray, if you make it into a spray and you spray it kind of like a numbing spray to the back of your throat, that it can be used to relieve acute sore throat, which is something I have yet to try, but I would love to try that. I'm not going to lie. So yes, another, obviously, as we touched on before, that sage helps with hormone regulation. So with things like that, like I said, women with menopause, if you have irregular periods, I know men icky, if you have irregular periods, or if you have painful periods, things like that, sage is really good to help you regulate your cycle. So because of that estrogenic factor. So, check it out for that. It's also a digestive tonic, so you can use small amounts of it as a mild digestive help situation. So if you got something going on in the intestinal, if you're backed up, whatever, try a little sage. You could if you want to. Again, do your own research on this stuff. It's also used for bites and stings, which I think is really cool. I have a video coming out about a situation where my husband actually got stung by a bee and how we kind of handled that, because I feel like we handled that really well. But nevertheless, it is used to help with bites and stings, which is awesome. Good thing to know. You always want to know that, because in a situation where someone is stung by a bee or something like that, the pain is instant. So you want to know what you can grab really fast. And then mouth ulcers, as well as there has been whispers. Okay, now I can't say 100% yes, 100% no, but that's to go for all of this stuff. But there has been whispers of the effectiveness of sage to lower blood fat levels. So again, y'all do your own research into all of these things, especially when it comes to things like that, like blood fat levels, things like that. You're going to want to really do your research before you use any herbal remedies to work through any of your issues that you're having with things like that. But there has been whispers of things such as that. So as you can see, sage has a lot of other good qualities besides spiritual. But if we're going to talk on spirituality of everything, obviously white sage and things like that are good to have in your home as far as protection, as far as clearing negative energies, and just lowering stress levels. For a lot of people, when they burn sage, it can really bring a sense of calm over them. So as far as spiritually and on that level, having sage is good for that. And a lot of people use white sage when they're doing that, or sage brush, which is kind of considered what people consider a weed version. Weed as in like, not that, but like weed as in, your ground level weeds. A weed version of sage would be sagebrush, which a couple years back we collected a bunch of sagebrush and actually dried it in our home and used it in our house, and it was great and we loved it. So there's that. So that's sage, and we have a lot on the list, so in the beginning I'm gonna kind of run through. So that's sage. Another one that I wanted to touch on, and that's really good for before I'm going. The reason I feel like that's really good for this season is obviously because it's cold season, it's cough season, it's hay fever season. So if you do have a sore throat, obviously, like I said, check with everything first. But if it was me and I had a sore throat and I was feeling experimental, right, I might try to make a sage spray and see if that's something that can help. Because if that's something that can help me, that's something that you can have in your arsenal. You can make a small bottle and keep that in your home, So especially if you are single and you're just living alone, then obviously that's great to have. But also if you have a family, if you have a family, you should have a natural medicine cabinet. So, if the cabinet's not up here, or if it's not at least physical, it should at least be up here. You got me? You get me? Okay, let's move on. The next one we're going to talk about is nettle root. I'm sure a lot of people, it's kind of a household name, I would say, nettle. Especially in the last few years, it's been more and more of a household name. I think for most people, not even just people clued into the herbal community, but people have been drinking nettle tea like crazy, or using nettle oil like crazy for hair growth and things like that. So I think this should be one that sounds familiar, but we'll see. Anyway, some rundown facts of nettle, which is something that I do sell. I do sell at Ebony Crown collections. Ebony Crown Natural Creations. You can look me up on Instagram or on Twitter or pretty much anywhere. But I do sell bags of loose nettle roots. But back to what we're doing. Shameless plug, okay? Yes, but nettle is anti-inflammatory, which is, again, good during these times because a lot of like the allergens and things like that can be really, really, really inflammatory to our system. So having a bunch of anti-inflammatories in your arsenal, perfect. Those are things you want to have in your arsenal, okay? So yes, it's anti-inflammatory, it's an astringent, anti-allergenic, which is good because that's something we're mentioning. Is there's a lot of allergies going on. Even rash, like diaper rash, you can make like a nettle, like a salve for diaper rash, okay, or the oil for diaper rash. So it's very good for allergic reactions, whether that's internal or external. So yes, it's an anti-allergenic. Um, Apparently for anemia, people who suffer from anemia, especially from women, when it comes to menstrual cycles, it can be very good for that. Again, bites and stings, good to know offhand because that's something you need quick. Um, and this is something I learned recently, but nettle is actually being used to stop bleeding or slow bleeding. And it's good for bloody noses, which I would have loved to know when my daughter had her first bloody nose. I would have loved to know that nettle helps for that. So now you know, okay. But yes, nettle is good for slowing bleeding and stopping bleeding. So it's good for bloody noses. So that's again arsenal. Um, and it also helps, this is also a new one for me, helps with symptoms from enlarged prostate. Now, this was actually a study that was done. So if you know what I'm saying, go online, Google, go into your Google books, and I can open up my book as well if we have time, which we have a little time. But I can open up my study book as well. But apparently there was actually a study done on nettle in which they found that it did help with some of the symptoms of enlarged prostate, which is very new to me. And it's very interesting because like when I talk to like men and things like that about nettle, for some reason it's been in their minds that nettle is like a plant for women. I'm not sure I'm not sure how or when that happened, but somehow it got into some men's mind that nettle is actually like. Oh, sorry if I'm looking over. I'm checking my books. I'm checking my books. Um, but yeah, somehow it got into men's mind that nettle happened to be a plant for women. I don't know. I have no idea how that happened. Actually, I'll say this. In a lot of women's health teas and things like that, you will find nettle in those. And I think maybe that's where the misconception came from, but it's not. It's not. And I encourage usually men to just be like more open minded. Because it's like, don't do yourself like that. You don't have to. It's not necessary. I'm gonna see if I can find nettle. But this is definitely again something that folks should do their research on. Trying to find it. I literally thought I just had it, but I must have lost it. It's okay. We'll touch back on it later because we got other stuff to look at. But yes, men, do some research. Folks, do some research on the helps with symptoms from enlarged prostate. But apparently that's a thing. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay. Let's move on to our next herb. And we're going to circle back to some of these and talk about ways that we can use them, obviously. Now, this one is one of my favorites. I love talking about this one. But before that, I'm going to drink some tea because, yeah. What am I drinking, you ask? You didn't ask, but it's okay. I'm actually drinking a women's health tea. So it's like raspberry leaf and peppermint and some other good things. I think there might be nettle in here as well. And usually if there's not nettle in my women's health tea, I have loose. I'll just put the loose nettle in there because yes. Okay. And obviously honey. There's honey in there. It's good for your throat. Okay. So again, this one I love talking about. I love this one. This one is valerian. I love valerian. Mainly because I have issues with anxiety, okay? Your girl has anxiety. So nettle like really saves my life. Or not nettle, sorry. This one really saves my life. This one is valerian. I'm going to try to read it. Try to write them out. Okay. Okay. Valeriana officinalis. Ooh, I just love the way it flows off. So this one is good for it's so let's just talk about just generally what it is. So it is a safe, non-addictive relaxant. This one also has been a little bit more of a household name, but it's still a little underground, mainly because of chamomile. So chamomile it's up there. It's so far up there that I would say some of the more not I wouldn't say more relaxing herbs, but some of the I don't know, I guess I will. So some of the more relaxing herbs or herbs that are a little bit more potent, they tend not to get seen or heard of as much simply because chamomile is it's the big man on campus. And so some of these things like valerian or skullcap or passion flower. Passion flower is making its way up there in the ranks. But some of those things tend to get just not spoken of very often because everyone thinks when they think sleepy time tea or when they think relaxation, they think chamomile. But this one, it's very relaxing. It's not addictive. It helps. Sorry about that. It helps a ton with anxiety, sleeping disorders like insomnia, things like that. And we were drinking in my house, me and my husband were drinking a lot of valerian root at one point. We were drinking tons of valerian. Um, but yeah, so it's a sedative. It can be a sedative in large quantities, right? A relaxant. It relieves muscle spasms. And I think when we're thinking of relieving muscle spasms, if we're thinking like stomach or something like that, then obviously that, teas and things. But if we're thinking like muscles on our body, that's more of like a solve or like an oil if you're going to do things like that, like rendering it that way, rubbing it on your skin or anywhere you're having muscle discomfort. And yes, and also blood pressure. Valerian has been known and has been under study for lowering blood pressure. The reason I say understudy is because valerian is not as studied as other herbs. And that's what I mean by like even chamomile kind of takes the lead in relaxants because chamomile has been so studied as far as relaxants go. But I think valerian is a little bit less studied. So it is understudy when it comes to lowering blood pressure and things like that. But there have been I like to call them folks of old, but really just our predecessors in the natural medicine field who have studied valerian and have studied its properties and have seen that it is effective in lowering blood pressure. So, if you're having blood pressure issues, that might be something you want to look into. But all the time, especially when it comes to medicine in general, all medicine, whether it is plant medicine or a pharmaceutical, you always want to make sure that there's no crossover with other medicines. This is why I talked in my course material video about certain books that will tell you like, okay, if you're taking medication for this or this or this, don't take this herb because it could have a cross effect with your medicine. So things like that, we want to be really careful of. So when it comes to things that lower your blood pressure, just look into how those things could react to medications that you already take or even herbs that you already are consuming, herbs or supplements. So there's that. That's a little disclaimer on that, Let's go on to the next one. Y'all, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. So we're gonna try to get through them. Okay, this one is also one that I like, but it's one that I like, but I haven't had much um experience using. Not like I would like to use it more, basically. So this one is yarrow. Now the scientific name, I was struggling on it, so I wrote the abbreviated version of the scientific name. Um I'm still struggling. But this one's scientific name is milfoil. And that is an abbreviated version of its scientific name. But y'all, when I put that into the Latin, thing so I could see how to say it, I was struggling. So I was like, I'm just gonna take the abbreviated version. So yarrow or milfoil. So this is a long history as a wound healer, this particular herb. Which I love. Anything that heals wounds, I love, especially like I'm gonna keep reiterating this, but if you have a family, like kids be getting hurt or scrapes, scratches, maybe you're cut, like if you're cooking, maybe you're cutting something in the kitchen, you accidentally like cut the tip of your finger, something like when you're really living that day-to-day family life, things that stop bleeding or help with wound control, they're great. Great things to have in your plant medicine arsenal. They're really great. They're really helpful. So yes, it has a long history of being a wound healer. It's also anti-inflammatory. Again, things that we love. And really during this time, inflammation becomes very high. And it's not even just about the seasons and about like hay fever and things like that, like what's in the air, but it's also just about the social season. So we're walking into, with it being September, obviously we're walking into like Halloween times, holidays times, things like that, Thanksgiving, things like that. And honestly, let's be real, y'all. We're getting inflammation during that time. And it's not even just coming from, like I said, outdoor. We're eating things that are causing inflammation. A lot of people drink more during the holidays just because if you're someone that uh is an occasional drinker that drinks during occasions, there's a lot of occasions coming up. So there's going to be a lot more inflammation internally in general, just from what we're consuming, what's all around us. We tend to walk a lot more during certain seasons of fall. Like if you're going to the pumpkin patch, or if you are going apple picking or something and you're on your feet all day, plus we're all working, you know, you can get inflammation in your legs. So there's a lot that can cause inflammation during this time. So it's great to have a lot of anti-inflammatory things in your arsenal. Another good one before we get back on track is I like to use St. John's wort, and we're going to talk about St. John's wort in a little bit. But I like to use St. John's wort and its anti-inflammatory properties. I like to put that in a foot soak. So a lot of these anti-inflammatory things you can make like almost like a huge tea, like a big vat of tea, but just to literally soak your feet in and just to get your ankles in there and really pull all that out. So there's that. So anyway, yarrow is a good anti-inflammatory. It can be beneficial for cold and flu recovery. Okay, so when we're talking about stuff like that, we're talking about if it is in combination. I mean, in general, you could use it, but in combination with other herbs, it just sets it off. It just sets it off. And a lot of these, once you put them in combination with another herb, it's medicine at its finest. You know what I mean? So a lot of the combinations we're talking about with yarrow is we're talking about peppermint and we're talking about elderflower. When you combine those things with yarrow in a cold and flu setting, so like teas and things like that, that can really, really help in the cold and flu area. So yes, it can help with that. It can also help with reducing heavy menstrual bleeding, which y'all, okay, I know I'm talking about menstrual bleeding a lot, but listen. The reality of of being a woman and menstruating is that even like those same things that cause the extra inflammation, like the things that we're consuming during this time, the food that we're eating, the change of season, all of these things also have an effect on our menstruation, and they can make menstruation more painful. They can make menstruation heavier. So when we're, you know what I'm saying? So when you're eating that Thanksgiving plate, okay, or you're smashing, you know what I'm saying, like holiday cookies or eating Halloween candy, like some of these things can actually directly affect how we menstruate, the pain level, and the severity of the bleeding that we might have. So, and it's natural. It's natural to want to enjoy these things during the season. So it's like I'm not telling you have to avoid that, but I'm just saying there's some tricks to the trade. There's some things you can do to kind of have your cake and eat it too, you know? So sure, eat all that stuff, do all that stuff that might, you know, but get your yarrow, get your yarrow tea, be consuming your women's health tea and things like that, and try to offset what could happen, basically. Because not every woman is the same. Not every menstruation for every woman is the same. Like there's so much levels and layers to us and how our bodies do things. So yes, peppermint, elderflower, good for that, and yarrow in general, good for menstruation, bleeding, and pain. So get get that in your arsenal, ladies. Get that in your arsenal, especially you know what I mean, like mothers. Anything that can make that process easier for us, because like when we had to deal with it, we had to deal with it. We had to deal with the husband, the kids, the pets, the dogs, the appointments, work, this, that. And it's like, we're on our period. We don't want to deal with any of that. We don't want to deal with any of that because it's all very uncomfortable. So just give yourself some ease. Really, when it's time to really take care of yourself, really take care of yourself. Give yourself some ease, drink the good tea, all that good stuff. Okay. So that's why, some of this stuff, it's going to come up. It's going to come up. It's going to be necessary. People who wonder, like, why is my period so much like, I feel like it's so much harder to have my period at the end of the year. That's why, babe. That's why, because we're living it up. We're trying to live it up. We're trying to eat our stuff and live wild and free. But those things do affect our menstruation. So there's that. Okay. Another good thing about yarrow is that it lowers high blood pressure. Okay. Again, do your own research on how these things interact with medications, other herbs, all that good stuff. But that is something that studies have shown it can do. As well as it is a mild diuretic. Gotta love a diuretic. Again, good for this time because we're all going to be eating. Okay, we're going to be eating candy. We're going to be eating cakes. We might be going to little holiday parties at the office. They got cookies and all that stuff. So yes, we're gonna need some of y'all gonna need some yeah, to keep you moving, smooth, okay? Because it gets reckless out here during the holidays. Let's be real. Yes, and another thing, this is new to me that I just heard of, and I'm gonna try this out on my husband as long as he's cleared to be trying these things. But it also tones varicose veins. So it has been kind of studied that it can help reduce kind of, I guess, the site of varicose veins. So it's something to look into. So definitely do your research on that if that's something that you're going through. Good for the holidays because, like, if you want to look your best, or if you don't care about the veins, then don't care about the veins, girl. Who cares? Okay. That might be my last one. And then some of the rest of them are just ones I'm going to rattle off, and I might not really divulge into them. Yes. But as for some of these things, I'm just going to touch on some of the things that I talked about one last time. But as for some of these things, look at what is, if you're a harvester, not all of us are. Some of us are just consumers, and that's okay. It's okay to just be a herbal consumer. Perfectly fine. Some of us, though, are harvesters or plant enthusiasts or growers. We're gardening. Our hands are in the soil. Me personally, I like to have my hands in the soil. And I also like to be a harvester. So when you're looking at these things, it's important to know what is the best or ripest at the time of which you're doing it. So, oh, another one we forgot to touch on, but I'll touch on in a minute. But so things like valerian, those things are like typically harvested in September. But you can harvest valerian year round under the proper circumstances, right? But it's good to know what things are good for when. Like some plants, the roots are best in fall and the leaves are best in spring, or vice versa, or whatever. So when you're looking these things up, if you're a harvester, it's always important to look up when is the best time to go for the roots versus go for the leaves versus go for the stalk of the plant or whatever. So that's just another thing to think of before we just jump right in and just pull something out of the ground. Because plants are resilient. So you could be harvesting the leaves and wait a season and then harvest the roots when they're at their peak. So it's just something to think about when we're looking at some of these things. Another good thing that is harvested in the fall and in the spring is dandelion. I didn't know I could write anything down for dandelion because I have a video on dandelion. You can go check out my video. It's a quick little TikTok length video, but on there I have listed all of the properties of dandelion, and there's a lot. Dandelion was once considered to be a cure-all plant. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I don't use the word cure, but in a lot of ways I'll say it still is very, very, very versatile when it comes to what it can do for you as a person. I love dandelion. I have a jar of dandelion root powder from dandelions that I harvested myself in my front yard from maybe, I don't know, I want to say 2 years ago. I harvested like a bunch. And dandelions, the thing about them is you can use the entire dandelion. And a lot of plants you can use the entire plant, but not every plant. You can, you know what I'm saying? Especially berries. Berries, there's some berries where you can harvest the berry, but you cannot use the leaves, you cannot use the stalk. You have to be very careful. But dandelion is one of those plants where you can use the entire plant. And these particular dandelions that I harvested, I only used the roots. I don't know why. I probably could have used the entire plant. But dandelions are a good example of plants that there's a sweet spot season that's really good for harvesting certain parts of the plant. And so the roots of the plant are really good to be harvested either in spring or in fall. And obviously we are in fall. Now, dandelion is a plant that's considered a weed. Now, for me personally, I don't think there is a such thing as a weed. And that's something I can touch on in later videos. I don't believe in weeds. Okay. I just don't believe in it. I believe that the word weeds, and that we need weed killer, I believe that is a hoax so that we can't pick our own medicine. But I'm not going. Okay. But dandelions, the only thing about weeds and plants that are considered weeds is that people don't necessarily treat them well, so you can't you shouldn't go to a park and be like, I'm gonna pick these dandelions, because the likelihood is that someone's dog friend might have come past that and they're thinking it's a weed, whatever. You know what I mean? And so you got to be really careful when it comes to plants that are considered weeds, things like dandelions, because you don't want to harvest anything dirty. You know what I mean? You don't want to eat or consume anything that's dirty. But dandelion roots, usually I have never harvested them in the fall. Me personally, I harvest them in the spring after the roots have had time to sit in the soil, especially because when we think about life cycles of plants, during the winter is when plants focus all of their energy on the roots of the plant. That's why we have a lot of plants that go dormant in the winter, because they're trying to survive the winter. So they focus a lot of their energy on the root of the plant. So personally, in the early spring, that's when I get out and harvest my dandelions. But I do see I do see why people would harvest in the fall. So that might be something that I do in the future. But it's important to remember like that some plants, you can wait the next season until certain parts of the plant are really, really, really good to be harvested and harvest that then. And just, if the leaves are good for fall, but people wait until spring for the roots, then just do that. Then just do that. Or you could not, you could do whatever you want. That's the thing about plant medicine that's great, is that if you know what you're doing and you're not doing anything that's going to be harmful, then you can do whatever you want. You can grow your plants inside, you can grow your plants outside. Your medicine, you could dry it, you could not dry it. There's even people who they collect their dried herbs in the fall when the leaves naturally dry out. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's awesome, because then you don't even have to dry it yourself. You're collecting it when it actually dries and falls naturally. I think that's super true, super cool, super true, and a super cool thing that people could do. So that's the cool part about plant medicine, is that if you know what you're doing, you can do whatever you want. Okay. And I'll make more videos on drying processes and my drying processes and how I do things. And there will be more to come on all of that. But before we get out of here, I just want to rattle off to you guys a couple more things that I think would be good for the season. I won't go super deep into why they would be good for the season, but I will just talk about things that'll be good for the season. And, some of them are obvious. So like elderberry, very obvious why that would be good for this season. Onions. Onions are going to be great for if you're ill. If you're ill, okay? And this is that season. So onions for anything. Onion soup, for fire cider. Now make your fire cider, guys. Don't skip out. I need to make new fire cider for my family. So yes, onions, garlic, things, herbs that are very warming. Cayenne, lemon. I'm just trying to come up with some off the top of my head. Another one that's going to be good, ashwagandha. Another what I was going to touch on earlier, but St. John's. So if you have SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, some of these things would be really good. I think I did a video on a SAD on one of my other channels, but I will do like a herbal version of it. But things like St. John's wort are going to be good for SAD. I also like sarsaparilla, and obviously seasonal affective disorder is things like depression, anxiety, things like that are onset during the winter months, fall and winter months. So yes, those are things that are good for mood stabilizing. I think also radiola is good for mood stabilizing as well, which is going to be really good for this time. There's more. There's just a ton more. And honestly, really what you need to do is get you a good herb book. Actually, get you 3 good herb books. But yes, y'all. And honey, stock up on as much honey as you can right now. I know honey can be like a little ka-ching-ching. There's ways to work around it. There's like whipped honey that I just learned about in the spread aisle. And it's really sweet. It's like super sweet. And you're not going to pay as much as you would pay for, I feel like, the actual tube like of honey. So it's kind of like more bang for your buck because you don't have to use as much because it's really, really sweet. So, think smarter, not harder. But honey is going to be good for this time, especially if you're making fire cider, or if you're making homemade cough syrup, or if you are taking any of your flower herbs and preserving. You can preserve in honey. Honey is a great thing to preserve in, especially during the season, because when you preserve in honey, you can use it, and it's really good for honey. It's in itself. It's really good for when you're sick or not feeling very well. Honey is really good. You can use it for anything. Okay, you can even wash your face with honey if you have like a lot of acne, or if you have adult acne, you can wash your face with honey. So if you find something that's good for skincare, which I think I had a herb in there that was, but I didn't read it off. You know what I'm saying? Put it in a jar of honey, let it sit for a while, and then start washing your face with it. Yeah. Anyway, y'all, I have got to get out of here. What time is it? Okay, it is almost 4 o'clock. It is almost 4 o'clock. I've got to get out of here. This was just a quick, 40-minute video, just like talking about what herbs are in season. That's what's in season right now. And when I say in season, I mean it can be harvested, it can be grown, but also in season as in like just things that are really good to have for this season, just necessary herbs for the season that we're in. So yeah, I hope you guys got everything that you need. If you are new around here, I have a little saying that I say at the end of all my videos, and that is that I am happy that y'all were here with me today. I'm happy to be here with y'all. And until next time, y'all, please support your girl. Support your girl. It is Plants Talk with Beck on Instagram, and on YouTube, it is just Plants Talk. And yeah, I love y'all, and I will see y'all in the next video or the next live. And we're going to be going live more often because that's what I have time for. I don't have that much time for editing, but like I have time to talk to y'all. So it's going to be more lives where I can just talk to y'all and we can just have good conversation. So there's that. And yeah, love y'all, and I will see y'all next time. And I got to sign off now because I'm a mom and I have stuff to do. Bye.